Hey Diana, did you know you can work 4 hours a week and still make buku bucks?
Mark, that's the dumbest thing you've ever said.
Ladies and gentlemen, jurists and just curious, welcome to the Successful Barrister podcast. Here you'll learn about marketing, management, and life skills for lawyers that probably won't get you disbarred. Hosted by Marc Whitehead, a seasoned lawyer who remembers when fax machines were cutting edge, and Diana Berry, attorney, COO, and the brains behind the scenes. Together, they are the legal world's most dynamic duo since statutes met regulations. So if you're looking to build a practice, not a prison, you're in the right place. Welcome to the Successful Barrister, where legal legends are made.
And welcome to the Successful Barrister podcast, a podcast for lawyers and law firm leaders about marketing, management, and life skills that probably won't get you disbarred. I am your host, Marc Whitehead, alongside with my number one, my COO, Diana Berry. Hey, Diana, what's up?
Hey, Mark, not much. Excited to talk about something that's not marketing related. Can I just say that?
Okay, everything is marketing related when you come down to it, but yes, I understand. We're not talking about marketing necessarily per se today. So it's funny. So we're going to talk a little bit about kind of this oddball, quirky book, The 4 Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss, which is weird because you like Tim Ferriss, but you've never read this book, which is
I tried. I love Tim Ferriss. I think that I know because, he's made two of his books made my top 10 book episode. And I have tried to read this book and I think it's stupid. So
right.
I'm even more excited to take
I
the,
love it. I love it.
um,
So we're going to talk about a book that you think is stupid.
but that you
Um,
think is great.
well, no, I think it's quirky in an extremely interesting way, and I think you can take nuggets out of it. So,
Okay.
so first of all, the concept that we just kind of blew through in our Hey Diana segment, which is, hey, you can make buku bucks working 4 hours a week. Well, you're not going to start off working 4 hours a week making buku bucks. And quite frankly, as I explained to you last week when we were talking about this, uh, the 4 hour work week it's not literal. You can't take it literally. It is just representing that you can work less if you work smarter, and you can be more successful if you channel your energies in the right direction as opposed to just trying to work your fingers to the bone. So it's that's all it really is.
Well,
And I
I
think
think you
that's
should have
where
put a
you get hung up
disclaimer.
because you are so
Yeah.
literal. You are so literal.
Yep, you definitely should have put a disclaimer on there that, hey, I really don't mean 4 hours because Tim Ferriss, with a podcast and everything else he does, I assure you works more than 4 hours a week. So he's not even living by his book.
I,
Okay. That's all I have to say about that.
okay. So anyway, so what are we really
Mhm.
talking about here?
I don't
So,
know. You read the book. I have not.
okay, right. So my concept here, though, I want to talk about a little today is how to build a lifestyle law firm. And what do we mean by that? We talked about this um, on the podcast before. It is a phrase that you hear a lot at, the different conferences that we go to. But, like our catchphrase, build a practice, not a prison. So the point is that we are trying to build here a law practice that serves the owner's lifestyle. And quite frankly, everybody that works here's lifestyle, but primarily the owner's lifestyle, me. Um, and that does not include working 80 hours a week and being all stressed out, and constantly having to deal with the constant brush fires that happen, during the average day-to-day work of a law firm. And how do you do that? How do you build a law firm that suits your life? Therefore, your life does not have to suit the law firm. That's kind of the concept that I'm trying to get. I'm trying to get the nuggets out of Ferris's book that will help us move in that direction.
Okay, so I guess we're talking about scaling your law firm and how you do it. So if you double the size of your law firm, how do you do that without doubling the hours that you put into the law firm?
So the real thing, and this is the real epiphany that I came up with, and I'm sure I got this through Steve Riley, through Atticus. But the larger our firm gets, the less I actually have to do on a day-to-day basis, because we basically, as we said before, we're killing the hero. All the things that I used to do, all the hats that I used to wear are now worn by somebody else. I used to do the books. I don't do that anymore. I have a full-time accounting service that does my books for me. I have an internal team that also assists within that. So I don't have to do any of that anymore. I don't have to do the hiring anymore because we now have an HR department. So the bigger you get, the less of the day-to-day minutia that I actually have to do as owner and CEO of the firm. And I think that's really the concept that we're trying to get here. One of the concepts, and I'm paraphrasing from what Ferriss said in the book. But I think most business owners, in our case, most lawyers, think that more hours equal more success. And I think what Ferriss is trying to point out is he flips that to saying better systems and better processes and a better organization equals more success. So that's what I spend most of my time doing now, is I spend most of my time working on how to build a better organization, because then the organization does all of the things, the day-to-day things that a law firm does, basically providing value to a client, solving clients' problems, and then figuring out how to do it in a profitable way that makes us money, makes all of us money.
Yeah, and he does this through what, the deal framework? I mean, is that how he takes you through the book?
Yeah, so he
An
has a
acronym?
framework called the deal framework, which is define, eliminate, automate, and liberate, which I love. I especially like that last word, liberate. And he kind of does it all in a stoic mindset, which I love stoicism. We did a podcast a while ago on stoicism. And the basics of stoicism is focus on what you can control and don't worry about what you can't control. Well, the reality is what the way I interpret that means is what buttons can I push on a day-to-day basis to improve the operations of the firm, and then what can't I control? I can't necessarily control the market. I can't necessarily control the government. I can't necessarily control, external economic forces out there. I can't control the competition that we have, but there are lots of things that are within my control, and those are the things that that I focus on. And the other thing I focus on, this is another book that I read, Who Not How. It's like I don't have to do all of these things. I just have to identify people who can do these things for me. Yesterday, I was doing some research on different marketing agencies who could possibly help the marketing of my law firm. In the past, we were doing some research on different, um, you know, people that it could help us in our finance department. Okay, so always looking for who can help us. Sometimes it's technology. What technology out there has been invented that could come in and help us? We've talked about Foundation AI, which is a vendor that we're using to come in and automate a lot of our processes. That was a big who, you know. So these are the things that I spend a lot of my time thinking about. But what it does is every time we kind of figure out the who, not how, or figure out how to improve a process or a system, it takes more and more off of my plate. So,
Yeah, and just so for the record, I also did not like Who Not How. So those two books, I see a theme here about those
of
books
books that
because,
you don't like, I love it. I love it. Now,
well,
why did you not like who, not how?
yeah, well, we did a whole episode on why I didn't like Who Not How, but
I
today
want
you're
to
going
hear it.
to talk.
I want to hear it again. People don't remember that episode. Why did you
I
not like
am your
it?
Who, Mark. I
Well,
am
of
your
course
Who.
you're my who, but I'm trying to find who's for you.
I think that that's very admirable and aspirational. And we're going to keep with the aspirational topic today. And like Ferriss's book, 4 Hour Work Week, finding another who for me is aspirational. So today, though, we're going to talk about the deal framework in terms of different points of your career, Mark, right? How you were able to kind of become the guy that really is the visionary, to use EOS speak, but also how you slowly delegated different things using the deal framework. And I mean, you don't work 4 hours a week, but apparently that's theoretical, not
That's
actual.
theoretical. Now, I think I could technically work 4 hours a week and get away with it. The problem is I would be bored out of my mind. I really would be bored out of my mind if I was working 4 hours a week. I don't want to work 4 hours a week.
Well, and that's weird because, we're going to talk about what Ferris says about boredom and what that really means, I think, later on as we work through the deal framework.
All right. So when we come back from break, we're going to get into the deal framework.
This podcast is sponsored by Marc Whitehead and Associates, a national disability benefits law firm. Marc Whitehead runs a firm of over 60 dedicated people whose mission is to make a difference in the lives of our injured and disabled clients. Marc represents disabled claimants in Social Security disability, private disability insurance, and veterans disability claims in all 50 states. Marc Whitehead is double board certified in both Social Security disability law and personal injury trial law. Marc has litigated disability cases in over 40 states and counting and can help your clients too. Stop throwing your phone calls away. Call Marc Whitehead at 701-VIP-LEAD. That's 701-VIP-LEAD. Or visit our website at disabilitydenials.com. Referral fees are paid in all jurisdictions where it is permitted. Refer us your disability cases today and know that your clients will be in good hands.
And we're back. All right. So we're basically going through a session here talking about all the books that Diana hates.
And there just aren't that many, but this one did not make sense to me. So maybe by the end of this episode, I'll have it make sense. I'll figure out a way to make it make sense for me.
Okay.
So we're going to work through the deal framework, and the first D stands for
Define the concept. So the concept, when you're defining something, is you want to get crystal clear on what your vision is. What is the end game that you are trying to accomplish? In our particular case, we've defined the mission of our firm, which is representing the injured and disabled and the elderly, and improving their lives. That is basically what we've defined our practice as, what we want to be. By definition, or by omission, we've eliminated other things. We eliminated the probate that we used to do. We've eliminated the bankruptcy that we used to do. We've eliminated the single event personal injury that we used to do. We've defined our mission very specifically. Some would argue very narrowly, but it helps us with the vision because we now know what we are trying to create. We understand the type of organization that we're trying to create. And it helps us create the ideal client that we want to serve. So you just, you kind of start with that. Define what you're trying to create, and then when you have that, then you kind of create this, what they call a freedom metric, i.e. you have time to focus on the very specific processes, systems, and practices that you need to develop, and the type of people that you need to hire and train, and the metrics that you need to measure to develop that type of practice, to develop that, as opposed to, when I was 33 years ago, when I started out, I took literally anything that came in the door, any live body that was breathing that could write me a check, I would take. And that didn't work out so well. It took me about 5 years to figure out that was really not the way to run a law practice. It was not the way to develop the revenue that I wanted to develop. It was not the way to develop the reputation that I wanted within the legal community. It's not the way to build the practice that I wanted to come to work in every day. So That's where you start. You have to define the concept.
And so I think that maybe let me take a step back and figure out to explain, tell you how I took define to mean, because as I've mentioned, I haven't read the book, but so I had to make it applicable to me because a 4-hour work week, Mark. I mean, I'm not bragging because this is absolutely not anything to brag about, but I will work 4 hours at home after hours on any given week, and that's not my weekend hours. I understand this is not anything Atticus would be happy about. So when I had to think about the 4-hour work week, when he said define, I was like, oh, well, that's easy. I mean, that's the migrate life exercise, right?
Mhm.
That's what Atticus, so Atticus puts us through migrate life, where you're envisioning what your great life looks like. And for me, I've said this before on this podcast, but flexibility is the F word you don't say in an interview. I get a ton of flexibility from Mark Whitehead, and I'm a very present person in my personal life. And so, Mark, I don't even know if I can still say this. Mark, like he tells me when I tell him, I'm like, hey, I got to leave early for the volleyball game or whatever. I've got to go. I got to go. He's like, all right, well, I know I'll get my pound of flesh. How many times have you told me that?
Almost probably on a daily basis.
And so for me, when defining my great life, I'm like, yeah, I understand. Mark and I have this very clear understanding that I get a lot of flexibility about when and like my hours here, but he will always get my work product. And to me, defining what it's not the 4 hours. It's defining that to me being present in my personal life while being able to still have a very challenging professional career. That's to me just that's end game, not 4 hours a week.
Right. So here's my tip for you. So um, skip, if you find a book, this is a tip for everybody. If you find a book that you're starting and you really just can't get into it, I'm not talking about fiction, I'm talking about like a business book. The first half of any book is they're laying out the premise. The real meat, the real juice, the real good stuff, the stuff that you can, make to-do lists out of is usually in the second half of the book. Just screw it, open the book to the middle and just start reading from that point forward. Okay. This is Mark's tip of the day. Okay. It is true. Um, and I think if you would have just cut to the middle of the book and started reading from that point forward, you probably would have done fine.
I
So
will try again. It's on my list, my very long list of books to read. But one of the things when I was preparing for this podcast, Mark, when you mentioned boredom, I think Ferriss says in this book, the opposite of happiness is boredom. And I really thought that really hit home when you said, yeah, I could work 4 hours a week, but I'd be bored out of my mind.
yeah, now that's actually probably a great quote that I would like to give to a few people.
Well, I'm not going to get in the middle of that. So let's move on to
We're
E.
not gonna talk about who I'm talking about there. But anyway,
We're going to move on to the E in our acronym, eliminate.
so to eliminate, which basically the concept there is to ruthlessly cut out low value activities, low value clients, and those distractions that are unproductive. Um, I've told the story before, but um, my first exposure to Atticus, Mark Powers, was given a presentation. This was in the early aughts. I think it was the State Bar Texas convention or something. But what he said struck home with me because when you go back to the office, I want you to fire your worst client and I want you to fire your worst employee. And I did. And it was like the greatest thing ever. I mean, I basically cut, and I did more than one, but I basically went through and looked at all of my low value clients, my troublesome clients, and I let them go. And I took my worst employee and I let them go. Um, and it was liberating. It was like I was a hooked from that point forward.
You got excited about letting
I
people
got
go.
excited. I was like, oh my God, why didn't I think of this before? I don't have to serve everyone. I don't have to be everyone's mentor.
And I think that Ferriss talks about the Pareto principle. We've talked a lot about that, but the Pareto principle in this section as well. Maybe it's not one, but maybe it's that look at your 80/20. Right. Where are you spending your time, and try and cut out some of the busyness
Right.
of what you do.
Right. Um, and one of the things like, that just kind of came to my mind was, and it's not necessarily cutting out low value activities, but at least getting the right people in the right seats, and we've talked about this, but, I got myself and my attorneys and paralegals out of the business of screening new cases. Not that that's not important. Those are not low value activities. Those are actually high value activities. Um, but it is things that myself and my lawyers and my paralegals were very poor at doing. So let's get that off of their plate. Let's let them focus on what they're good at. And let's develop, like we've developed an intake team that is very good at doing intake and signing up cases. We looked at some of the marketing activities that we did that really were just, they sounded good, but they were really a waste of money. They weren't very productive. We cut that. We dropped unprofitable practice areas that didn't make any sense anymore. So, you start cutting things that don't make sense. And you start cutting activities, that don't make sense for certain people to do. The concept of you push activities down to the lowest wage person that can competently do it. So that's really where we start eliminating. We start reassigning, we start putting the right people in the right seats. We start eliminating things. Like I mentioned, I no longer keep the books. I no longer do the accounting. Again, as we've said before, I no longer actually carry an active caseload. So I start eliminating things that can be done more efficiently and cheaper by other people.
And I find this very practical, very topical, because Mark, you and I are about to go to lunch with our team leaders. And so for in our firm, or in Mark's firm, those are the right hands to each of the attorneys that lead that lead departments. And Mark has spent, oh gosh, for a couple of years now, we take him out to lunch every month, and we go over either managerial topics, HR topics, anything really, just to kind of get them used to, or get them more comfortable with the position that they're in. It's very valuable time. And I thought a lot about what Ferriss had to say about being busy. From the book, he said, being busy is most often used as a guise for avoiding the few critically important but uncomfortable actions. And I found, because we've promoted a lot from within, which is really a credit to you, Mark. And so a lot of our managers are so used to being busy that now, as you promote from within, what you'll find is that they're like, but wait, what am I supposed to do? I'm like, no, you manage people now. You're not doing, and you have to help them find what is their true optimal task, and rather than just producing output for you. And I think that's, and it varies, right? So when they're first getting used to it, there's a lot of hand holding. So I spend a lot of time with our team leaders that are just promoted from within, making sure that they understand. But as time goes on, I get a little bit, I think, Mark, this is where you tell me I lack compassion sometimes. I can be very blunt. That is my low I on the disc, about like, hey, no, you're getting in the weeds again. This is not what you're supposed to be doing as a manager. And we try to redirect them into those higher level tasks that we've asked them to do.
Right. So we talk about this all the time with our team leaders is, they'll come up, we'll have them, what do you think your most important job responsibilities are? And they'll come back with a list of 20 things. And I'm like, okay, that's great. But what are the top 3 things that you need to be responsible for? And that's what I really want them to focus on, is what are the top 3, there's 3 is a round number, not really, but what are the top 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 things that they are responsible for? Okay, so number 15 to 20 on here, that probably needs to get delegated off to somebody else, okay? Or at least done in such a way that you can do that at 4 o'clock on a Friday afternoon, okay? That is not your priority task. What are your top 3 to 4 to 5 priority things that you have to stay on top of, that you need to start Monday morning at 9 o'clock in the morning and make sure that you get this stuff done, that this stuff happens automatically. And that's what I think um, is a problem for a lot of our middle management type people, particularly those that are new to the position, that may have been promoted, from a staff position into a managerial position. Is they're so used to doing 1 through 20. When you get into that management position, you're not supposed to do 1 through 20. You're supposed to do about 3 through 5, and that's it. And everything else needs to get delegated down. And that is sometimes a hard concept to get them to understand. It's a hard habit to get them to break because they're so used to doing those other things.
And I do think, Mark, that exercise is great for wherever our listeners are in their career, whether they're like you, not carrying a docket and trying to figure out this whole new visionary role, or a COO of a law firm, or even a team lead. What are your big three? And Mark, you and I revisit my big three often because it does change. Depending on where we are. Last year, when we were in very much ramp up mode, it looks very different than what it does now. And so you just need to make sure you're aligned with that, with your visionary or your boss. So I completely agree with you with the whole delegate thing. We've talked a lot about different tools, delegate and elevate, the Eisenhower matrix about delegation. But I think that Ferriss's A in the deal framework is also another option, especially in today's AI world. What does the A stand for, Mark?
Automate. And you get to carry this part because my screen just froze.
So the A in the automated, which I thought was interesting because I don't have when this book was written, but it's perfect for where we are now. So basically using technology and systems to do work that you would need a human to do, right? And so, but what I think the cautionary thing that Ferriss says is that you should never automate something that can be eliminated, and never delegate something that can be automated or streamlined. And I think that's just kind of, I mean, I'm a Ferris fan, so I'll go ahead and say I think it's kind of brilliant, especially for the AI world that we live in now. Everybody's like, let me use AI to do all this. And I'm like, yes, but stop and think first. Do you really need to be doing X, Y, Z? And then if so, yes, can it be automated? And can you use AI to do it? Or do you need a human touch point?
Right. Um, I am still going to default to the human touch point. Although, I love me some chat, but, we are in the area of law, and law requires critical thinking. It requires social skills. It requires being relatable to your client. It requires all of these touchy-feely things that I don't think that AI can necessarily do, but it is a good tool to do certain functions within that. Like for example, we look at how we can use automation. I'm not kind of focusing strictly on AI, but how we use automation to free up the time of our case managers so they can do more of the customer service work. That's the key thing, the human element. We want our humans to excel at being human. And we want to eliminate the non-human activities that they do on a regular basis, so they have more free time to do the human things, to relate to the clients, to talk to the clients, to investigate. It's amazing how much you learn about your case if you just spend 30 minutes interviewing your client and really talking to them. Like, oh, I never thought about that. Well, it's because we get in such a hurry that we don't take the time to sit and have real life conversations with our clients. So, and that's the beauty of automating a lot of tasks. It frees up our people's time to do those human to human things. So,
Yep. And in Litify, it makes it real easy with the Salesforce compatibility. Basically, anything that has a date in our Litify system, which is our case management system, there's probably a reminder around it. So, for example, our onboarding calls, anytime anybody sets a date in that field, text automatically goes out to a client that says, hey, you have an onboarding call with person ABC at X date and X time and Y time. And then the day before, we send that same reminder, much as you would get, with a haircut, guys, or even your dentist. We've automated a lot of those things for our Social Security clients. The consultative exam, something very important that they do not miss. And I cannot emphasize enough that as you grow, as your firm is growing, if you want to systematize the communication to your clients, automation is the best way to do it. So one of the things that we found is that, well, all of our clients, more or less will have the same 5 to 7 questions about what is a consultative exam? What should I bring? How should I get there? What if I need to reschedule? And so if you templatize templatize, is that a verb?
I like the word.
Templatize, we're going to make it, we're going to work with it.
We're
We're
going to
going
work
to
with it.
templatize the email that is sent to them when you get the consultative exam notice. Then 30 days before, if it's that far out, and then the day before, you get the same checklist, the same information to your clients. So yes, it's absolutely about making sure they get the same information, but also hopefully keeping your case managers from having to say the same information again and again, which can lead to burnout, honestly. And so I think that you can definitely use technology, especially again in today's AI world, to help live the 4-hour work week,
Yes.
which
So
is still
our
theoretical.
theoretical. So our last concept, the L in deal, is liberate, which is the one I love because I love liberation. I want to be liberated. And the concept there is basically to build a firm that runs without me having to be in the office on a daily basis. Now, I will say that I would miss you people terribly if I wasn't here on a daily basis. So I actually enjoy coming into work, but I like the freedom to not have to if I do not want to. So
It is the beauty of having your name on the building to have your cake and eat it too, which is that you want to be involved in everything, but also not want to be involved in everything.
right. Well, I just want the freedom. So, last month, my wife wanted to go on a quick trip to Vegas to go see Teddy Swims. I'm like, sure, we can do that. Next month I'm going to make a quick trip up to New York to visit my daughter. And, I have the freedom to kind of make these quick second decisions. I don't have to plan vacations months and months in advance and get ready for it and gear up for it and get all my ducks in a row so I can go leave. I have now more freedom to kind of spontaneously just take off at a moment's notice if I need to, because I know everything is pretty well taken care of. Because I'm not working on the day-to-day grind. I am working on more high-level conceptual things. Example, we use the EOS system, the Entrepreneurial Operating System by Gino Wickman in his book Traction, that sort of helps run the firm. And those meetings happen whether I'm in attendance in them or not. And they basically make sure that that the trains still run on time, that everything still happens. We use KPIs and dashboards for every department so we can see how things are running. We look at our scorecard every week at level 10. So, we see the weekly metrics. Did we meet our numbers this past week? If we didn't, well, why? And I know that somebody's looking at this. So I know that I have the freedom to pop in, pop out as I see fit. My real problem, as my wife will tell you, is that after I'm gone for about 5 or 6 days, I get really, really antsy and I want to pop back in. I'm going to Europe for 12 days in October, and my wife says I can't bring my laptop with me. And that's starting to cause me highs because I just want the ability to pop in.
Well, and you don't need your laptop to do that in today's tech world.
I
But
guess, but I prefer the laptop over, a phone.
you
But
prefer the big screen.
yeah,
So,
my eyes are terrible. I need a big screen.
so Mark, one of the things that Atticus preaches is how many days off a year are they encouraging us to take? You guys to take?
175 days, which
That
sounds
includes
like,
weekends, though.
so if you don't work any weekends, so that's 104 days right there. So all right, so you got 104 days if you don't work any weekends, and I don't typically work any weekends except Sunday night, I will start planning my week. So I don't work weekends. So that means I need another, how many is that? Another 70 days off.
And a lot of our Atta cousins have successfully, I don't know, taken upwards of what, 4 weeks off, like in big blocks. And one
Oh,
of the things,
I've seen some take 6 month sabbaticals. So
yep,
it can be
and
done.
that is a true Tim Ferriss 4 hour work week, living the dream right there.
It would drive me nuts. I would, I would be, I would be wanting to kill somebody if I was gone for
Well, I'm
6 months.
not suggesting it for you, but for some of our listeners who are like, oh, wow, that's a dream. How do I do that, Mark? I will say, to share some of the wisdom from our Atta cousins, the bat phone has been very successful. So everybody, I mean, I'm sure listeners that, your right hand and your main leadership team have your actual cell phone. So some of our Atta cousins turned that one off, and there was one phone number that only like the person has. It's called the bat phone. And if there is a true emergency, there is a point of contact and a way to reach, the firm owner. So it's not like you're completely off grid. There's obviously that type of contingency plan in place because everybody needs that assurance, right? You can reach me, but your main phone line with all the text messages and the emails and the random things that are coming through, that's off for the people who have been successful at doing this.
Yeah.
And they've extended, they go through, maybe a week before the firm owner leaves. I know Steve Riley does this with Samantha, and they go over, these are the contingency plans. These are the things that you're going to move forward when I'm gone. And then when he comes back, they have the same debrief on each of those same items. What happened when I was gone? So building in those systems, I think, really helps you kind of live out the L of Liberate. And then, briefly from my perspective, I think it's so funny that, I would say that L for Liberate for me means true flexibility. Again, like that freedom is having flexibility. So even though I work too many hours. I work every weekend. I work at night. I'm not, again, bragging, guys. I'm just saying that with flexibility, though, particularly where I am in my career, because I am Mark's who, that just means that's I don't get the 4 hour work week, but I still somehow feel like I'm living um, Ferris's deal framework because I do feel like I do get that liberation.
Mhm.
Liberation.
All right. Well, with that, we're going to take our final break. And when we come back, we're going to give you Mark's 5 action steps going forward.
This is Marc Whitehead, lawyer, entrepreneur, and business coach. Thanks for listening to the Successful Barrister podcast. If we've stirred your juices, hit me up with an email at mark@markwhitehead.com. Remember, Mark is spelled with a C. And get on the Successful Barrister newsletter mailing list. Even better, let's set up a call. I'd love to talk to you about working together, talk shop, or just shooting the breeze.
And we're back. All right. So we're going to go over my 5 action steps going forward to how to implement some of the concepts within Ferriss's 4-hour work week as they apply to the practice of law. And the first one I'm going to say is you need to sit down and write out on a piece of paper your lifestyle law firm vision. Like, what is your vision? Because your vision is going to be different from my vision. I've sort of laid out in this podcast what my vision is, but your vision may be totally different. You may love to litigate and you may love to be in a courtroom, so you need to build the lifestyle law firm around that particular vision of how you want your life to go. You may have a totally different vision where you totally want to step out of the practice of law and basically just lead the law firm. There's probably 100 different ways to do it. But you need to sit down and define exactly what you want your role and your schedule to look like. And you kind of piece it out. What do you want your role and your schedule to look like now, in 90 days, in 12 months, in 3 years, and in 5 years? And, in other words, build your plan out over the next 3 to 5 years, because you're not going to do all of this overnight. It's going to be incremental, but you need to start with a vision and figure out what it is. You need to start looking at those things that you want to take off your plate, quite frankly. The second thing, I would say you need to audit your current case mix and your current marketing channels. And I would look at the bottom 20% of each of those and see if it merits cutting. What are the bottom 20% of the cases that you currently have in your inventory? Should you be having those cases? Should you cut those cases? Should you refer those cases? Should you set up systems where you no longer take cases similar to those? And also look at your marketing channels, particularly where are you spending your time and where are you spending your money and where are you getting the least bang for your buck, either your actual physical dollar or the least bang for the time that you're spending. And look at about eliminating those things. For example, we eliminated local service ads. We had run those fairly extensively up until last year. And we just kept banging our head against the wall, like, why is this not working? Why is this not working? Everybody else seems to make it work. Well, it didn't work for us, so we cut it. I've since figured out why it didn't work for us, because you can't segment by age with LSAs, which is important for us. But basically, look at your bottom 20% and see if it makes sense to cut it. And I'm going to bet you that it probably does. Number 3, map your top 5 repetitive tasks. What do you keep doing over and over and over again, and figure out a way to automate them? One thing that I did a long time ago, which I thought was brilliant, was when I used to do initial client consults, I would spend 15 minutes going over the same thing over and over and over and over and over again. And I finally realized, why don't I just record that? And then while they're sitting in the waiting room, have them view the video of me going over the same thing that I go over and over and over again, maybe with some lovely handouts and some lovely, checklists and templates and things like that. Have them watch the video. I actually went to a urologist once, and that's what he did. And that's where I got the idea. The doctor's trying to save some time. He didn't want to explain the same stuff over and over and over again. I'm like, well, if he can do it, I can do it. So I created this lovely 15-minute video, and it saved a lot of time when I was doing those initial consults. Now today, there's no way in hell I'd ever do an initial consult, but that's just a good example. What can you do? Hearing prep. We have a video that clients now look at to prep them for their Social Security disability hearing. So my lawyers can save some time in doing the initial hearing prep, things like that. But basically, figure out the repetitive tasks that you're doing and figure out ways, either through your CRM or through templates or workflows, that you can automate those processes. You can jump in here anytime, by the way.
No, I think you're doing a great job. So the D for defining your lifestyle vision, auditing as to eliminating, and then, automating your repetitive tasks.
Exactly. So number 4 on the list is identify and train your leadership team. You want to shift decision making away from where the bottlenecks are. And generally speaking, you're the bottleneck. Me, the leader of the firm, I'm the bottleneck, because again, I'm off flitting around the country. And if everybody had to wait to talk to me to make a decision, then hell, nothing would ever get done. You need to empower people to make decisions on their own, particularly when you're trying to delegate, automate, and liberate. Delegate a lot. You have a certain spending authority that you don't have to ask me. Just you have total authority. I will never question you as long as you're within that certain level of authority, which has gotten bigger and bigger over time.
Not that we've discussed that, because I still run everything by you, but yes.
You do
get snippy with me.
I get snippy every time you ask me. I go, is that within your authority? And you go, yes. I'm like, then why are you asking me?
Yeah, I got a fine email from you, and I'm like, yesterday I wanted to be like, is it fine or is it fine? But I didn't. So
it's like the word dude. You can say dude can seem, dude,
fine.
Dude. There's so many connotations that can come away with how you pronounce that word.
But number 5 is the one I find most interesting, Mark, because I'm going to see if you live by this one.
Yeah. Block a freedom day on your calendar.
That's your
Um,
5. That's one thing that you think our listeners should do.
I think you should block a freedom day. Now, I used to do this on a fairly regular basis before you came, and I would block out one day a month where I would not be in the office. I would just gather my stuff up and I would go to the Harris County Law Library, which is downtown. It's a very lovely place. It has a lot of quiet areas. It has a lot of resources. And I would block one day a month and I would go spend just the entire day in the library to think, to maybe look at, research some things, to, work out problems. I called it, I called it my think day. Ferriss calls it your freedom day. But to me, it was just one day where I was not working on anything in the office. I just went there to have quiet time and to think and to have the resources around me if I wanted to work on a project or do whatever. And they had a lovely smoothie bar downstairs. So, how I love my smoothies.
You and your smoothies, Mark.
I know. So I think what I would talk about now is I like to block time at least once a week, where I use it to think about strategy. What strategic things should we, as a firm, be moving forward with? It is hard to do. I'm not saying it's easy to do, but you need to block those days. EOS would call it, what does EOS call it when you block those days? They have a different term.
Clarity breaks.
Clarity breaks. Yes. I like that. That's a good one. Let's change that. I'm going to change it from block of freedom day to block clarity breaks.
Yeah, you have more resources now. You have people in place. You should absolutely be doing a clarity break. Your monthly clarity break, Mark.
Right. Just to get clear on what's going on. Doesn't have to be about work. Could be about your life. Could be about your your life choices. Could be about your health. That would be a good one. Let's get some clarity on your health. All right, but those are my 5 action items. Come on, Diana, give me some of yours.
You're putting me on the spot there, Mark. I really,
I know, I did. This is
I
what I
will
like to do. I
say,
like to make you squirm.
yeah, that's fair. I will say that my aha moment for this whole book was, I've got it really good. I'm living, I'm living it. I will say, I don't know if we're going to do any justice to our relationship here, Mark, because I'm going to tell another story. At the beginning of the year, I came to you during our same page meeting, which is an EOS meeting between the visionary and the integrator. And I said, hey, Mark, these are the days off I'm going to take off this year. And it was nearing 20. It was 20 days without weekends, guys. I was nearing them. And I was like, and I'm not done yet. And you were like, and I was like, oh, are you okay with this? And he was like, I'm going to get my plan of Fesh. And I was like, okay. And so from then on, so I really do feel like I'm living Tim Ferriss's 4-hour work week, but working way more than 4 hours, a week, because I do have that freedom to be very present. So that was when I defined what I wanted out of my life. I needed to be very present in my personal life. And it didn't matter what the job did. If I could not be present in my personal life, I would be willing to sacrifice for that. And you allow me to do that. And I get very compelling, challenging work here, in both leadership as well as strategic projects. And that Liberate, I know it means very different things for us, because I do not get to I don't get to decide that I'm going to Vegas this weekend. I don't think you and I would be okay with that. But the liberation that I do get, if liberation is a word, liberation I do get is very empowering. And so I would just challenge our listeners that whatever this book looks like to you, maybe pick it up from the middle, like Mark said, and see if it works for you. But it just, don't do what I did and think that it's literal and has to be 4
Again,
hours a
it's
week.
not literal. The 4-hour, it is simply
There
a
needs to be an
metaphor.
asterisk.
It's simply a metaphor for building the life that you want to live, making your firm serve your life. That's simply a metaphor. That's all it means. All right.
Yep.
With that, I'm getting the high sign that we are out of time. So I want to thank everybody for listening to the Successful Barrister podcast, where legal legends are made. I'm Mark.
And I'm Diana.
And together we are the dynamic duo of law. So remember to rate and review us wherever you get your podcast, and subscribe to the podcast. Or if you want to look at us on YouTube, follow us on YouTube. And I know all of you know how to hit the forward button. So just hit the forward button on your phone and forward our podcast to your friends. And remember to visit us at successfulbarrister.com, and be sure to remember to visit our sponsor, Marc Whitehead and Associates, a national disability law firm, at disabilitydenials.com. And with that, we're out of here.
Bye.